With the sheer magnitude of classic titles that were released in the PlayStation 2 era, it's almost easy to forget all of the terrible ones. Well, spoiler, there were a lot. Let's take a look at 15 more such titles and what made them so bad. GODAI, Elemental Force. Revenge, elemental abilities, and the ever-consuming void await in GODAI Elemental Force. This melee action title offered martial arts combat and gliding inspired by the likes of wire fu films, while adding in some bullet time because why not? It would almost be intriguing if the gliding wasn't unresponsive, the performance horrendous, the bugs plentiful, and just about everything else being a chore to sit through. Almost. Mike Tyson Heavyweight Boxing. Before the Fight Night series began, Codemasters, better known for its racing sims, even back in the day, tried its hand at a boxing title. With access to more than 10 different types of punches, horrible visuals, shallow and plodding gameplay, and an overall lack of polish, Mike Tyson Heavyweight Boxing was a loser in every single sense. It made the Ready to Rumble series look amazing, which is an impressive feat. Evolution Snowboarding. Count on Konami, of all companies, to not give you a straightforward and fun snowboarding game. In Evolution Snowboarding, you become embroiled in a plot involving an evil corporation, climate change conspiracies, and enemies called boar droids. Inexplicably, there were pro snowboarders involved as well, while Killswitch Engage and Slipknot adorned the soundtrack. Unfortunately, it's just one big mess with its terrible presentation, lack of challenge, and lame controls. Godzilla Unleashed. Pipeworks 3D brawling titles features 20 playable monsters across 4 factions. From different versions of Godzilla to Mothra and Mechagodzilla 2. Multiple endings, destructible environments, it all seemed like a good idea, but this was actually an updated version of Godzilla Save the Earth on PS2 and suffered from tons of lag while missing a number of playable monsters. As such, the controls were horrid and unresponsive in all versions, a death sentence for any fighting game, while the presentation was just plain ugly. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter. It's surprising that the first Advanced Warfighter should even be here when the Xbox 360 version was so good. But this was a time when visual and feature parity across platforms wasn't always a given. As a result, the PS2 version not only suffered from downgraded visuals, but missed a lot of features. Missions were shorter, the player character never spoke, and you only got one AI-controlled teammate instead of 3. The OG Xbox version also suffered from the same, but still offered slightly better performance, making the PS2 port the worst of the lot. Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. What could go wrong in trying to adapt one of the more terrible Marvel films into video game form? As 2K Games showcased, just about everything. The player could choose from one of 4 members, each with their own unique abilities and fused attacks, in theory. In practice, it's incredibly repetitive. And the PS2 version is made all the worse with its mediocre visuals, mediocre boss fights, and overall mediocre experience.
I'm sorry, Ben, but we've yet to reach the core of the operation.
I knew he was gonna say that.
Tell me about it. This was so not the day I had planned.
Evolution Skateboarding. What do Frogger, Solid Snake all have in common? They were all a part of Evolution Skateboarding, Konami's attempt at a skateboarding sim. As you'd probably have guessed, it wasn't very good, with controls being wonky at times and downright bizarre at others, as the action felt sluggish overall. For all of its visual prowess, it downright faltered in providing a compelling gameplay experience, and no amount of unlockable characters could fix that. Final Fight Streetwise. A gritty reboot of the Final Fight franchise is the last thing that anyone needed, so of course Capcom made it happen. It had everything: an awful story starring Cody's brother Kyle, side missions that involved killing cockroaches, shabby combat that's as repetitive as it is insultingly easy, and of course horrible graphics and camera controls. Even if you persevere and unlock the original game in emulated form, it also runs terribly, like one last cruel joke on the franchise's good name. Dynasty Warriors 6.
Fight alone. Brave. Let us fight. Come get some.
Almost a year after its launch for the PS3 in Japan, Dynasty Warriors 6 would come to the PS2 in a less than ideal state. Overall, it suffered from failing to evolve the series' formula with its repetitive hack-and-slash gameplay and lack of new features. But the PS2 version suffers even more on top of this, with downgraded graphics, significantly less on-screen foes, and tons of slowdown, especially in co-op, not to mention elements like swimming and dueling being removed outright. The Sopranos: Road to Respect. The linear action-adventure includes talent like James Gandolfini and Vincent Pastore, who reprise their roles fairly well. That's where the positives end, though, as the gameplay is too shallow and plagued with numerous bugs and poor visuals to warrant any kind of playtime. Star Trek: Shattered Universe. Star Trek: Shattered Universe asks a very simple question with its premise. What if Federation but evil? The problem is that it takes the intrigue, philosophy, and drama of the franchise and attempts to create a space combat title and doesn't even have you playing as the USS Excelsior. Awful presentation, terrible controls, and more were enough to make you wonder how titles like Star Trek Elite Force and Deep Space Nine: The Fallen were even possible all those years ago. Unlimited Saga. Few role-playing games back in the day inspired the kind of utter bewilderment that Unlimited Saga did. Baffling quests that seemingly did nothing for the plot, and almost non-existent interaction in towns is one thing. Traversing dungeons in board game fashion, and triggering hazards or battles without any knowledge of the same is another. Throw in mechanics like the slot machine-esque reel system, which requires timed button presses for attacks, and life points, which are different from HP, for a needlessly complicated sequel that's a shadow of its predecessors. Tetris Worlds. A Tetris title involving 5 different platforms with 3 development teams and a story mode about evacuating a planet before a star went supernova. If that doesn't sound like Tetris, then what does? Tetris Worlds offered 6 different worlds to play through, with each essentially being a different variant on the game. However, the PS2 version was one of 3 to allow endlessly spinning a tetrimino and ensure its fit before locking, taking away any semblance of challenge, and compromising the game's core identity. All in all, a better game than many on this list, but still not very good. State of Emergency 2. The original State of Emergency was an unremarkable but straightforward beat-em-up that could be fun. The sequel, developed by DC Studios and published by South Peak Interactive, focused more on third-person shooting and really nothing else of note. Perhaps there was a desire to cash in on something when it was made, but it's hard to tell with just how poor the end product is. Shadow the Hedgehog. No list of terrible games is truly complete without Shadow the Hedgehog. Having the anti-hero star in his own game wasn't a bad idea in itself, but giving guns and swords to him along with a motorcycle while dialing up the edginess? Even Sonic 06 gave us some hope with its initial showings, whereas Shadow the Hedgehog just seemed like a bad idea from the get-go. Clunky controls and bad level design ruled, but the story was even more horrendous, torturing you to play multiple routes just to unlock the true ending. That's all for now. If you enjoy what you saw, please hit the like button. And if you're new to the channel, now is a great time to subscribe. We upload brand new videos every single day. After subscribing, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you next time, right here on Gaming Bolt.